Welcome to another episode of Franky D Crafter. This week, we'll be finishing off the sea serpent's tail. Let's get crafty. Let's start by crafting the basic shape of the sea serpent's tail. I always try to use aluminum for this. This way, I save clay for the important stuff. You will need to cover the whole thing with hot glue. I like to do this because it stops the aluminum from shifting when applying the clay. The next thing you want to do is get your base ready. I'm using styrofoam board. I made this base smaller than the base for the sea serpent's head. And like always, I like to round off the sides. Using the same techniques we used for the teeth on the sea serpent's head, we will be adding the fins on the sea serpent's tail. The difference here is that instead of using toothpicks, we'll be using skewers this time. And don't throw away the leftover skewers. Use them as the support for the coral spikes. It's at this point that I decide to join the base and the tail. When attaching the tail to the base, I poke a hole in the aluminum and hot glue a toothpick in. I use that to pin it to the base while also adding hot glue to it. Once I attach the base, I continue to add the fins to the side of the tail. I poke holes and stick the ends of skewers to it. I went with 3 skewers, making the middle one the longest and the ones on the sides shorter. At this point, I advise you to be very careful while handling the miniature. The skewers are super sharp. I decide to add another thin layer of hot glue around the skewers I have just put on the tail. I also hit on any other place I might have missed and on the base itself. I decide to add the clay at this point of the build. There's no crazy technique here. I just cover all the areas of the sea serpent's tail where there is hot glue. Just make sure to use a little bit of water to smooth the clay out. Let's move on to the actual fins. You can use any type of card paper. I ended up using the leftover cardboard from a recently opened case of crazy glue. The process is simple. I place a piece of paper next to where I want the fin to be and trace the outline. I cut it out and hot glue it right in. Then I add more hot glue wherever it's needed. For the ends of the tail fins, I cut out a small piece and then do the same thing. And to add a bit of texture, run your hot glue gun back and forth on the fins without adding too much hot glue. Continue this process until you complete all the fins. I add more hot glue to the base of the sea serpent's tail. And while you're at it, Use the same technique as the Sea Serpent's Head episode to add the coral spikes. I primed the miniature, but then realized that I wanted more contrast between the spikes and the fins. So I decided to add hot glue to the spikes to add volume to them. Using paper mache, add waves on the base. If you need extra detail on how to make waves, check out my last video. I'll link it in the description below. For the painting process, I'll only go into things that I didn't cover in the Sea Serpent video. Everything else is relatively the same when it comes to painting the tail. Something interesting to note here, at least I found it interesting. It took me less than an hour to craft the tail, but it took me 2 hours to finish the painting process alone. Is this normal? Or is it just because I'm still new to the painting side of this? Let me know in the comment section below. Another small tip here is, try to keep track of all the paints you use on your minis. That way, if you choose to make another one or an add-on, you know exactly what colors you used. Now, let me show you how I painted the fins. I first apply a mixture of granite gray from Apple Barrel and purple lake from FW acrylic inks. I try to make it lighter as I get to the ends of the fins. I also try to pick up on some of that texture from the hot glue gun. I then go even lighter, but with a light magenta color. This is where I take my magenta color and dry brush it onto the fins. I like to do this process in these steps because I find it that the magenta turns out very vibrant, which is what I'm going for here. I go back with the solid purple lake to add shadows, mainly on the areas near the spikes and where the fins connect to the tail. The last thing you want to work on is the spikes. For the bottom side, continue the light blue / gray color of the underbelly. And for the top, continue the turquoise. Then, just finish it off with some white highlights and you should be done. Thank you very much for everything, and thank you for watching this episode of Franky D Crafter. If you feel stuck on any of these projects, don't be shy. Hit me up on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. I'll be more than happy to answer any of your questions and help you through the project. Alright, and a quick note. Me and Thom from Adventuring Addicts are collaborating to get you ready for the upcoming release of Ghost of Saltmarsh. Check out his latest video on tactical maps. Great video, great tips. I like this shirt. This collab's gonna be sick, so you don't wanna miss it. Subscribe. Catch you on the flipper side.